Good morning.
Hello.
Hi, I hope you can all hear us.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Everyone's faces are popping up on my screen.
Good morning.
Hi, Beth.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Good evening.
Good morning.
Monique, maybe you can tell me when everyone's in from the waiting room, and then we'll begin.
Just about. We just have one more person joining. We may have a couple more over the next few minutes, but I think you can go ahead.
Okay, well, hello, and as Beth said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Susan Basili. I'm a member of the steering committee of the Women, Peace and Security Network. And it's my great privilege and honor to welcome you all to our first webinar of 2021. And I'm very, very pleased to be able to introduce the two women who are going to be speaking to you from Afghanistan and from Canada. Two women who are going to speak to us about the current situation for women and girls in Afghanistan. We will have a short presentation of about 20 minutes by each of them, and then Monique will facilitate the questions, and she'll explain the process for that when our speakers have finished. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you Palwasha Hassan, who is currently in Afghanistan. She's speaking to us from her office there. She is the director of the Afghan Women's Educational Center, and she's also a founding member of the Afghan Women's Network. And this is her first time speaking to us as the Women, Peace and Security Network. And we're very honored, Palwasha, that you've been able to join us. And our second speaker is Murad Ziai. Murad is from the Canadian Women for Women in Afghanistan, and that organization is co-sponsoring this webinar with us. She is based now in Calgary in Canada, and she's the Senior Director for Canadian Women for Women in Afghanistan. And on a personal note, I had the wonderful opportunity in 2011 to be able to meet with her and to see the office in Kabul where she was living at the time. So we are all greatly interested and concerned about the situation of women and girls in Afghanistan. And we have two wonderful speakers who can help us to understand a little bit more about the current situation. So Palwasha, would you like to start?
You're muted, Palwasha.
Yes, sorry, I always forget to mute myself. But a very good evening to all of you over there. And some of my friends who are joining from this side of the world, good evening to you. It's so pleasant to be with all of you there. Some of you I know for years. I see
We
Janice
cannot
over
hear you,
here.
Palwasha.
You can hear me? How can I help it better?
We can hear you, but it's not very loud.
I can hear.
It's not very loud.
Let me see what can help me.
I just turned up my volume for folks that.
Yeah, please do something because my volume is at 100%. So I don't know what else me, but right now, is it better? Can I stop?
Palwasha, it's Sasha.
Hello?
Maybe if you just go a little closer to the speaker, so a little closer to your laptop or computer, that might help. And just raise your voice a little bit more, and that will work. We can hear you well enough, though.
I I can also try for my phone, but for that I will give time to Murwari to start, and so that I see if my telephone works better than my laptop.
I can hear you,
Yeah,
Parashija.
I think it's okay.
Murwari John, are you ready to start? I will try also from my phone if that is more um, better in my voice.
Yeah, sure.
Otherwise,
I can go ahead and start, and you can try your other device.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Good morning. Good evening. Good afternoon, everyone joining us from anywhere, different locations, different time zones. Thank you so much for joining us in this webinar. And I would like to thank Women, Peace and Security Network to co-host this webinar. It's an important, very important um, matter and topic to talk about. And as much as we talk, as many people as we reach, that much we will ensure women's rights are protected in the current peace talks. Really, I appreciate your time joining us in today's webinar. Just starting before, as Susan introduced me, recently moved to Canada, working for the same organization on the same programs and projects I was working in Afghanistan. The first thing that was very noticeable for me here was people were talking about weather. So I hope you all enjoy the winter here. Um, and at that time, it was a really kind of funny thing for me. It looked because in Afghanistan, just before coming, our hot topic to talk about was how many casualties, how many incidents, how many kidnappings, like all these very serious issues that we were like gathering during lunchtime, colleagues, and talking in the morning. This incident happened. How many died, or how many activists are attacked. This was the hot topic. And while I moved here, this was the real hot topic about weather. So I'm asking everyone, enjoying the winter, having fun with winter season, and I hope you are all safe, and just enjoy what we have here. It's not and be feel lucky because you have a really safe topic to talk about, and really fun thing to discuss as opposed to what we have in Afghanistan, always talking about the casualties and incidents and security issues for everyone, not only for women but children, men, everyone. So having said that, my presentation is, as Susan said, it's all about, we are talking about the current situation, but I let that part to be mostly covered by Palwasha, talking from Kabul. And while I started, I'm just sharing, please allow me to share my screen with you, because I am talking mostly about what's going on here in Canada, what have been done, we have done as a Canadian organization, and the role of Canada in advocacy work for women's rights in Afghanistan. So just bear with me to share this screen with you. Do you see my presentation? Anyone can say?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I'm going little
Yes,
back.
Murwajan, I can see.
Sorry?
We can all see it.
Okay, good. So I'm a little bit going back to the history of our background and Canada's role, as I mentioned, in advocacy work for women's rights in Afghanistan. And it goes back to 1997 when the journalist Sally Armstrong's article attracted Canadians' attention to the human rights crisis Afghan women were facing during Taliban. And everyone was shocked reading that article in Canada. And just two Calgarians at that time, Janice Eisenhower, who is joining us today, our executive director at that time and co-founder of this organization, and also Carolyn Richer, another co-founder of the organization. They were shocked by this article and knowing that how life is hard for Afghan women under the Taliban regime. And they just had asked themselves one question. And that one question was, what can I do to improve or to help Afghan women in a tangible way, in a good way? And that one question led to many actions at that time, including meeting with other activists who were raising awareness about women's rights situation in Afghanistan, to bringing in women from across the country into the discussions, delivering letter writing campaigns, and reaching out to the politicians and influencers, what can be done. And their advocacy efforts had paid off because some very significant actions took place at that time. And one of the examples from that time was that Minister Axworthy addressed women's rights, Afghan women's rights and Afghan women's issues they were facing under the Taliban regime in his inaugural address for the Canada's presidency of UN Security Council. And the other thing that their advocacy efforts led to was creating a network of Canadians to unite together in solidarity and support of Afghan women in response to the crisis they were facing under the Taliban regime. So this is some background of how one small step turned to this big success of advocacy in this organization, and also at that time in Afghanistan. And here we are after over 2 decades of activism and advocacy and programming in Afghanistan, with 2,000 members across the country who are supporting our goals, and which are providing education opportunities for Afghan women, Afghan girls and their families, and also to educate Canadians about the situation of human rights in Afghanistan. And why education? In early days, the organization they offered support in general support to the population, including healthcare, economic development, and awareness raising, as well as education. But over time, the focus shifted to only education, only delivering education in response to the priorities identified by Afghan women and Afghan communities. And also there is a global evidence base that supports this idea that education is the only thing, the single important thing that can change women's lives, whether it's related to health outcomes, or it's poverty reduction, or economic development, human security, and others. So just giving you here some statistics about how Afghan women progressed in the past 20 years or so. These statistics can give you a good picture of how lives were during Taliban and after Taliban. Right after Taliban, Afghan women rejuvenated their strengths, and using all the opportunity they had in hand to stand up again. The educated population, or the educated generation of Afghan women, they reached every social life, from political leaders to entrepreneurs to sports champions to inventors. And now currently 27% of civil service jobs are held by Afghan women, and 16% in senior management positions, while we had nothing in 2000 under the rule of Taliban. Today, women are holding 27% of seats in the parliament. They are ambassadors, they are ministers, they are deputy ministers, leading government, non-government organizations, and private sectors. They are active in all aspects of life, social life in the country. Some other figures to share with you is how life for women changed in the past 20 years. Women's life expectancy increased from 56 years to 66 years between 2001 and 2017. Maternal mortality rate has decreased significantly from 1100 to under 400 lives birth between 2000 and 2018. Adult literacy rate the same, has seen increased from 43% to over 66%. However, this adult literacy rate there is a gender gap in this sector because men's literacy rate is 55%, while for women it's only 29%. Still, there is a big gender gap here. Lots of progress in education. And I'm not only talking about the numbers, but also the quality has changed in the past recent years. In 2001, only 1 million children were going to school, and almost none, 0.8% girls going to school, and that were the areas that were not that were out of control of Taliban. Today, more than 9 million children are going to school. 40% are girls. The same with number of schools had increased from 1,800 to 18,000 in over 10 years. Number of teachers has increased significantly. The most important thing is that the social norms and values have changed alongside these statistics. According to a survey conducted by the Asia Foundation, 87% of the population, women and men, they support goal of gender equality in education. And they see that barrier to education is a challenge for Afghan women. So we have, there have been slow but impressive progress in Afghan women's lives in the past 20 years. In almost all indicators, development indicators, but mainly in health, education, and free media. We women, we are scared, we are concerned that all these gains are at the bargain of losing them. And there have been, although the Taliban has stated that they no longer oppose girls' education, but they have been very weak in their statement, and they have said that they allow girls' education under Islamic laws. However, they haven't elaborated what that means. We don't know what that education will look like. And from our experience, Taliban's interpretation of Islamic rules is very extreme, that do not allow girls of over age of 10, for example, to go to public school. And in their time, girls only age of 8 or maximum 10 in some locations were going to only madrasa, even not to public school. So this is a very serious concern for all of us who are active in Afghanistan and live there. Overview of current situation. I'm sure Palwasha will give you a comprehensive overview of what situation is in today's Afghanistan, but just give you a very brief analysis of the situation. Everyone knows that there has been a deal, a peace deal between Taliban and United States in February last year that mostly benefit Taliban. The violence has escalated in the country, and recently with high level of target killings of elite Afghan activists from many parts of lives, journalists, women's rights activists, and prominent civil society activists. Um, Taliban haven't cut their ties with Al Qaeda as it was supposed they were supposed to do under this agreement, according to the reports. 5,000 Taliban prisoners were released just for the sake of this peace deal, and according to some reports, most of them have rejoined their fighting groups. The United States, unfortunately, reducing their troops in Afghanistan without the conditions of that agreement being met by the Taliban, whether it's reduction or ending of violence or securing the past 20 years gains. And this is a serious concern for all of us. Women fear that we will be handed over to the Taliban and losing all our gains that we have achieved in the past 20 years. That's why women are making recommendations, raising their concerns, and also making their recommendations to different stakeholders. They reach to, for example, the countries who are in Doha, Qatar, and are kind of supporting or observing the peace negotiation there, including Germany, Norway, Uzbekistan, and Indonesia, Qatar itself, and United States, and pushing them to pressurize both parties to make a peace deal that's sustainable and that ensures women's rights and human rights post this negotiation. Our advocacy work, as I mentioned before, that advocacy has been the foundation of our organization. And because of the recent situation in the country, we have created a formal advocacy program alongside our education programs. And it has twofold objectives: amplifying the voices of Afghan women by working with women organizations to reach and influence the international community, and to enhancing the capacity and commitment of Canadian changemakers as well as the international community. And some of the examples of how what we have done so far is, for example, last September during our symposium, we hosted a panel discussion of women's rights activists to talk about the situation of the current situation of women in Afghanistan. We have drafted many op-eds for many publications, and hosted or co-hosted or joined many webinars, conducted a peace survey amongst our beneficiaries in different parts of the country, and different category of people, from a very high educated level or just uneducated and illiterate community, from young population to adult, and share those findings through our social media, and in different campaigns that we conducted so far. And also that informs our strategy for advocacy. Our position and recommendations: we want a true immediate ceasefire in Afghanistan. You know what, from January 2020 to October, the United Nations assistance missions in Afghanistan recorded 6,000 civilian casualties, only 6,000 civilian casualties that haven't been in war. They are not part of any fighting group, but they are civilians, and they lost their lives, including women and children. An immediate and true ceasefire will save thousands of lives and save thousands of families from suffering the loss of their loved ones. So that's the most important thing. If we want to ensure a sustainable peace, and if we want to have confidence on both sides, there should be a ceasefire. Otherwise, with this high insurgency and high rate of violence in the country, how Afghan people will trust there will be peace that ensure their safety and security. We want a peace process that will not bargain away the rights of Afghan women and girls. And also, we want Afghan rights to education to be legally protected at all levels and for every single Afghan population, women and men, boys and girls, and from primary to higher education. And what you can do, considering the Canada's feminist majority, feminist policy, feminist foreign policy, sorry. Oh, I'm moving, okay. Help influence Canadian politicians to ensure Canada is present at the peace talks, like we have done in the other peace talks, like Syrian peace talks, to ensure UN Resolution 1325 is upheld. It's better to take action now than it's very late. And we are afraid that as much as we delay in what we should do, we are giving space for Taliban to push their agenda on during the peace talks. Join our network of members. Follow us on social media, our Facebook and Twitter, and use our advocacy tools and resources in your organization. And please feel free to reach out to our engagement and advocacy coordinator at community@cw4wafon.ca if you would like to join, if you our initiatives, and if you would like to use our toolkit that we just developed and we are going to launch that. And if you would like to connect with us, and if you want to support our advocacy work in Afghanistan the way we do, so please feel free to reach to our to Sarah, our engagement and advocacy coordinator. So thank you very much for that, and I'm happy to take any question maybe after Palwasha has delivered her key points.
Thank you so much. That was such a helpful and important overview, both of the history of the organization and a very good introduction to where we are at currently now in Afghanistan. And I'll just turn it over to Palwasha now.
Hi again. Do you hear me okay now?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Okay. So I put off my telephone in that case. All right. Thank you very much, and very good evening to all of you there. I particularly like to recognize some of the faces, some of the women that I have been admiring their work and their support all these years with Afghan women, and that includes Homa Hutfar there, Nilufar Furzan, Janice, who I know for a long time, and so many other familiar faces. So salam to all of you, hi, and also good evening to people who are joining from my side of the world. It is such an honor to be with all of you today. I know my friend Murwarid has started, and she almost covered everything, giving you an oversight of the peace process in Afghanistan, and also a little bit of what is going on currently with women. I will be elaborating a little bit more, and I think there has been a good scene setting with where women are in Afghanistan in terms of the development, whether it's political and social level. I think a lot has been changed in last 2 decades. And women has been one of the good partners with international support that has been availed to Afghanistan after the political changes, especially after Taliban, an era where women were totally vanished from social and political scene. So women took all the possible advantage of the situation and opportunities that they could have. So Marwarit has shared with you some of the statistics, and I think this was not just happening in Blue. Some of the friends like Nilufar and others who knows us for a long time, I think there has been a very long struggle started by some of us at a very young age, but also we had some of our senior members working with us when we were refugee in Pakistan, and also some of the women inside Afghanistan starting their work with a lot of hardship under very difficult circumstances. Even at the time when Taliban were not allowing women to appear in any of those activities, like underground schools, and so many other activities that women has supported, and sort of sowing the seed of peace even at that time. Women started actually their peace discussion long ago, before political peace was started in Afghanistan. And even the international and Afghanistan government sort of agreed on a peace agenda in 2010 during a conference in London through London Compact. But women of Afghanistan has longer history than that. For instance, we do started speaking and revolting against what has been bombardment of Afghanistan in 2001 by Americans. We also made our campaigns for a peaceful resolution of Afghanistan, not through military means, long ago. But our current efforts for more participation of women in peace process has started in 2006 through a meeting that we had here in Kabul with at least 10 of us sitting in that meeting. And since then, we have started several other initiatives to speak about that Afghanistan need a peaceful way for resolving the conflict that we have been going through. And that discussion has emerged to a proper agenda in 2010, when women presented their first paper in the around or on the side of the London conference, and through several other meetings since then. So Afghan women has started their sort of first deciding like what they wanted from peace, what peace meant to them, and what are some of the red lines that they would like to see. But above all, women believe that that the peace process should be an inclusive peace process, because women thought like what we have lost in war, we shouldn't lose it in peace. And since then, we had several initiatives that has brought women together, and women putting their agenda from a long time. Since 2019, when American has started lead the peace process, women has been skeptical of the process, because a lot of things were going not in a transparent way. And when last year in February 29, US and Taliban reached an agreement that has been not even including Afghanistan government or other political sides. It has been a negotiation between the Taliban and American. But Afghans were presented with sort of like fourfold agenda, and one of it included the intra-Afghan dialogue, which US will facilitate for Afghan government or Afghanistan state side with the Taliban. But that came with a big price, which was a release of 5,000 Taliban without having compensation for anything, which was a big thing for Afghan living here with everyday violence, to see a ceasefire as a result of that. We were promised with reduction of violence, but unfortunately, since the peace deal between US and Taliban, we see a high level of security escalation in Afghanistan, and most of it is targeted towards women. sorry, towards civilian. Almost 40% of the civilian targets include women and children. And that is affecting all of us, our work, our family life, our day-to-day life. And when I'm talking to my friends, each of them has the feeling, especially with recent targeted killing of the women activists and journalists and lawyers, judges, basically anybody progressive in Afghanistan who are not Taliban, not government, or belong to any of those circles, are still one of the biggest hit lists or the target of the Taliban. And that is putting everybody so much, everybody's life in danger, but also sort of terrorizing our own feeling. Like I've been talking to my friends who are feeling like this is each minute I'm feeling like my head will be blown up or my car will turn out. So these are the explosion and other experiences that we wake up every morning with it, and we sleep with it every evening with the news of somebody is killed, which includes our close friends. Some of them are even close family members. That is the situation. But what women of Afghanistan wants, women of Afghanistan, as I said, have a long history before anybody else starting that we want peace. But the way we want peace to be carried, that is not the way that the US lead peace is taking us to. We think peace process could have been taken with more responsibility, with slowed and staged out of international forces, and with a political pressure on the neighboring countries who are now a lot of information which was hidden before is so open. For instance, the Taliban headquarters in Pakistan are no more a secret. Taliban are openly traveling from Doha to Pakistan, meeting with the officials, but also meeting with their own headquarters in Pakistan. That means that the sort of support and international pressure, which is important for the peace process, to bring that sort of symmetry between the two sides, which is Afghanistan and Taliban, or the Republic side of Afghanistan and Taliban, is not there. There is an upper hand of Taliban, and every day we have new orders from Taliban, like now they want another 7,000 of the prisoners to be released. Some of these prisoners include some of like the worst human rights criminals, individuals, which is strange, and that a lot of US is cooperating or the in release of while facilitating this process. And this is making situation so uneven for any of those red lines that women of Afghanistan have, or any of those precondition or condition that the government of Afghanistan or the Republic side of Afghanistan would like to have to pursue in any talk with Taliban. It looks like a joke, some of the information that we are getting, that Taliban don't even take any of those things serious. And every time they put new condition for continuation of negotiation or talks. In this kind of situation, what is needed? Of course, we don't expect Canada as one of the country who has the longest relation with Afghanistan since 1960s, or since 2001, Canadian forces has been in Afghanistan, and probably 3.6 billion of international aid is also coming to Afghanistan. I don't think we are asking for return of Canadian troops or forever staying of the US troops, but I think it's very much important to see all the circumstances around the peace, which looks really like a peace, not just a way for a withdrawal of US forces out of Afghanistan. I think for all these years, Canada and other countries has invested in Afghanistan, and whatever we achieved, whether it is education for girls, which is a career for women, which is women in politics, improvement in human rights situation. I don't see we don't have problem. We have a lot of issues still in this country because the challenge is simply enormous. However, I think the figures that Marwarit has presented, that shows a big change from what Taliban has left Afghanistan in 2001. This is huge. We have in a country which is one of the youngest country probably among the world nation, with 70% of its population with very young age. It's important to that young people in Afghanistan pursue their goals, whether it's education, whether it is development of the country, whether it's and most importantly the gender aspect. We are half of the population of this country, and we are still dealt with the same manner as we were during the rule of Taliban in the areas where their influence is high. We have been receiving in some of the remote provinces that my organization is working, we are receiving letters from Taliban that saying that we cannot work, or with some of the women organization who is bringing women out of their houses, and they're pursuing sort of like an Islamic agenda. So still some of the women activities are not considered secret, and only certain type of activities are considered Islamic or allowable for women, which is which Taliban has to still define. But from what we have from those years of Taliban, it probably is a very limited definition. Taliban still insists on education for girls within Islamic framework, but that framework doesn't resemble any other Islamic countries, whether it's Pakistan, Iran, or Saudi Arabia, or any other countries, because we see a lot of progress in most of the Islamic countries. I understand there are a lot of human rights challenges exist in those countries as well, but the progress which has been made from Saudi Arabia to Iran to Pakistan. For instance, Saudi Arabia this last year has allowed for women to travel without mahram. That is a big and a big shift in terms of women's rights and mobility. And I think that that is important. That kind of changes are important for Afghanistan and Taliban to embrace those changes in Islamic countries, to ensure that women has rights for what we have right now. I don't think we have a big luxury of rights that will be so different than that we can give up on a lot, because we are so many times told by some of international counterpart that what are you ready to lose, because peace talk is about gain, take and give, and that is true. But I think our rights and the exercises that we have in our country are so modest. Women are not the same level of doesn't have the same level of freedom and liberty as women had in 60s in Afghanistan. I think there has been a lot of so-called modesty or Islamic modesty that women are wearing, from scarf to full coverage. But what women want, like education, working in offices, have the right to work, because they are also supporting families. Today, more women who are employed in Afghanistan are supporting families and extended families, because we are still living in that culture, which is very traditional, and we have very extended sort of family structures. And if one woman lose job, that means several family will no more be supported. And this is only possible if we're talking sense. And I think it's important for countries like Canada, who has been engaged in war in Afghanistan, along US and other alliances to keep engaging themselves with the peace in Afghanistan. I know Canada has a national action plan, and Afghanistan should be one of the countries which comes under this NAP or the National Action Plan based on 1325. Also, we have the feminist policy, aid policy, and I think that's very much important when it comes to country like Afghanistan. Taliban will need international support if they're joining any government in Afghanistan. And it is important that this aid should be conditioned on the way you're treating the women of Afghanistan. But also it's important that what a woman has defined for themselves inside Afghanistan, that they shouldn't be forgotten in this situation. Right now, I know several of my friends who are under serious threat. There is no visas issued in Afghanistan, and there is no government support for individual activists and people who are under threat. So basically, we are left with the situation to deal with gun and in our head. So it is our job to save ourselves, how we are saving ourselves from being blown up next in the list. So we are sometimes making fun of our situation, but I think it's important for world to know that we are really left alone at this point. And that is our expectation from Women, Peace, and Security sort of network, to understand that what is going in that conflict sitting in Afghanistan, which could be as relevant for your foreign policy, but also I think we have stronger and bigger than that, which is our relation as woman to woman, and as our relation as a human to human, because it is getting really, it is out of proportion for anybody to be here with. Government has limited resources, and unfortunately a lot of limitation in terms of how they are managing it. I don't think civil rights activists or women's rights activists or any of these groups are their priority. When we are talking to them, yes, they are listening to us, but there is no concrete measures for protection here. And that's important to be known. Women at this point, what we need for all those women who has taken challenges and still living and working in Afghanistan, they need their network, their organization to be supported for what they are doing. Because on one side, we are still struggling with resources. On the other side, we are facing a challenge at home, at the community, and leave alone the politics of Taliban and peace and all that. From last 2 years, we are trying to organize our meetings, go to Doha, speak face-to-face with Taliban, to pronounce our situation. I think we didn't have that support and possibility which was available to Afghan women. We also need a stronger support from women in the Muslim countries. We are in contact with Bloom and other organization. It's important all these networks should be strengthened for women to feel more supported in their struggle against the odds that we are facing on everyday basis. And I think the Afghan peace process needs a serious monitoring. And in this monitoring, we need international human rights activists and peace activists to be along Afghan women, to be as a watch group over the process, but also to push your governments to ensure how the conflict in Afghanistan goes to that asymmetric level. How countries like Pakistan could be pushed and for making genuinely supporting Afghanistan peace process, and how to support the women of Afghanistan to feel that they are not alone, and for the fight that they are fighting, that they don't struggle with a small thing like resources and maybe trainings and encouragement of the network and the support they need. So I would stop here and I will be happy to respond to questions as we have this conversation going on. Thank you.
Oh, Asha, I can't thank you enough for bringing the reality of the situation you're living with every day and the people of Afghanistan are living with every day into our screens. I think this pandemic has been so difficult for the past year in allowing us really to get information about so many things going on around the world, and to hear your voice is such an important reminder of the purpose of our network and your networks around feminist solidarity with women in Afghanistan. And I'm so grateful that both you and Murad have given us some practical suggestions about things that we can do going forward. And I just want to note there have been a lot of really good suggestions in the chat, but I don't know how, well, Monique will know this, I don't know how that gets saved, but I think it would be very helpful if we can send out an update report from this meeting with some of those suggestions and documents and links that were in the chat, and that we can continue to discuss how to strengthen our solidarity between the Canadian Women for Women in Afghanistan and the Afghan Women's Network and the critically important work that you're doing, but also to get the voices out there and heard. I see that Sally is on the call now, and of course we know that many of the beginnings of hearing the voices of women in Afghanistan started with you, Sally. So I'm going to turn it over to Monique, and she's going to facilitate the question and answer. But from the bottom of my heart to both of you, I really want to thank you, and it's just so important to hear your voices. Thank you.